The philosophy of nothing, 0 or 1, the origin of existence. Point 1. A question older than civilization. Why is there something rather than nothing? This question is older than science, older than religion, older than any civilization. Anyone who has ever gazed at the starry sky and felt the inner tension of infinity has already encountered this question. Science describes how the world works, but before we can talk about how it works, we must answer a deeper question. Why does it exist at all? The very fact of reality's existence requires an explanation. We can explore galaxies, measure the expansion rate of the universe, study elementary particles and the structure of the brain, but all of this occurs within the existing world. And what explains the very fact of its existence? Point 2. What is nothing in the philosophical sense? When it is said that the universe arose from nothing, this word most often refers not to a philosophical nothingness, but to a physical state of vacuum, a quantum field, or a singularity. But a vacuum is not nothing. It obeys laws, possesses structure and energy. Even emptiness in physics has properties. Philosophical nothingness is absolute absence. The absence of matter, energy, space, time, laws, and even possibility. It is neither darkness nor emptiness, because darkness and emptiness already presuppose existence. Absolute nothingness has no properties, cannot change, and cannot give rise to being. Point 3. Principle. From nothing, nothing comes. Even in antiquity, the idea was formulated. Ex nihilo nihil fit, from nothing, nothing comes. This is a logical principle. If absolute nothingness ever existed, it would continue, because nothing possesses a mechanism for the transition to be. For a process to begin, there must be a cause. For a cause to exist, something must exist. Absence does not initiate processes. Point 4. The beginning of time and cosmology. Modern cosmology states that space and time have a beginning. If time began, the cause of its beginning cannot be within time. It must be outside of time and space. A cause cannot be part of that which it brings into existence. If there is a beginning, then there must be a reason independent of it. Point 5. Entropy and the finiteness of the past. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy increases. If the universe had existed infinitely in the past, it would have already reached a state of heat death. However, we observe a structured reality. This points to a beginning and reinforces the question of the reason for existence. Point 6. The principle of sufficient reason. Leibniz formulated the principle of sufficient reason. Every existing thing has an explanation either in itself or externally. The universe is changeable and could have been different. This means that it does not contain an explanation for its own existence within itself. Therefore, its reason must lie externally. Point 7. Information and the code of light. DNA is a code. Information is not identical to matter. Ink is material, but the meaning of a text is not. Meaning is an abstract reality expressed through a medium. If semantic information exists in nature, an explanation of its origin is required. Point 8. Consciousness and subjective experience. Consciousness remains a difficult philosophical problem. Neural processes can be described physically, but subjective experience cannot be reduced to the quantitative characteristics of matter. Why does experience exist? Why is there an inner self? This question goes beyond purely physical description. Point 9. Irreversibility of fact. Documents can be destroyed and archives erased, but an event that has already occurred cannot be prevented from occurring. The global events of recent years, for example, the 2020 pandemic, can be interpreted in different ways, but the very fact that humanity survived this period cannot be undone. A fact that has once entered into being cannot be turned into non-being. Point 10. Persistence of being. The past does not exist as a process but as a fact. Even if we imagine a distant future in which the stars have faded, the very fact that life and consciousness once existed will remain part of the history of the universe. Nothingness has no power to undo what has happened. Point 11. Necessary being as a foundation. If nothing can give rise to being, if time has a beginning, if what has happened cannot be undone, if consciousness and information point to the depth of reality, then the most consistent conclusion is that the foundation of the world lies not in absence, but in necessary being, a reality that exists not by chance or temporarily, but fundamentally. The name is secondary. What is essential is the recognition that absence does not explain existence, whereas necessary being makes it possible. The question then is no longer whether something exists in place of nothing, but whether we are willing to continue searching for the foundation of reality itself.